Hi, I'm Paul Van Slyke, and I'm very psyched for the upcoming season and want to share with the Alpine community some safety concerns that have been on my mind. In 2019, most of you viewed my presentation on BNet. This is the next chapter and addresses specific installations that I've seen on social media and have personally witnessed. The examples that I will be referencing may meet some minimal safety standards. I will discuss functional improvements that should be made to improve athlete safety. I ask that this season you adopt and follow these lessons at your clubs and at your races. The next slide video is an example of how BNet works best, a glancing blow to the BNet that has a system above the fall zone. As intended, the BNet system that continues well above the crash zone absorbs the athlete's speed as a result of the system working as a unit.
Atlee McGrath. Ciekawy jestem, co pokaże nam ten młodziak. 21 lat ma McGrath. Ojej, no pokazał, ale nie to chcieliśmy oglądać w siatkach. Norweg, ależ tutaj zadziałała fizyka, wystrzelony w powietrze. No oby się nic nie stało z lewym kolanem. Oj, no wstawaj. Tak, pomachał, wszystko w porządku. Jeszcze raz. Mała kompresja. No tak. Źle to wyglądało. Mam nadzieję, że nic się nie stało. Nawet przy takim obciążeniu, przy takim nacisku wiązanie nie ma prawa puścić, no bo wektor siły skierowany w dół, w kierunku narty, a nie do boku, żeby wypiąć wiązanie.
We all wish every morning in alpine ski racing was like this image. Good snow, beautiful sunrise, clear skies, no grooming need from the previous day as the snow is dense, and the BNet is set up and in good condition. Of course, we all know this is not always the case, and we, as a community, need to pitch in to make those days that are not so favorable work. We all share a responsibility to participate in our ski racing and training arenas to make sure we are doing the best to make sure our eyes are scanning our field of play for hazards, particularly those that may affect the athlete's safety as if they push their limits beyond their ability and they have a fall. Today's presentation should, hopefully, leave you with some new thoughts and a higher understanding of how BNet works and some tools to take home and share with your community. The basics BNet review. This should not be new information to anyone in our sport unless you are brand new, official, or coach. Best practices for setting up BNet for all manufacturers is to be minimum 4 meters from the obstacle you are trying to protect. A minimum of 2 meters distance between rows of BNet in multiple row setups. Minimum 1 meter overlap when connecting sections of net together, and avoid placing BNet poles adjacent to one another. And minimum of 3 sections, 60 meters of BNet is required to protect an object, 40 meters above the object and 20 meters below. BNet installations must be inspected frequently to ensure BNet poles and net are not frozen in place. Best practices, all manufacturers continued. BNet is designed to absorb and dissipate kinetic energy, the speed of an athlete. It may not stop the fallen athlete. BNet is designed to become dislodged when impacted as a function of reducing the speed and kinetic energy. Multiple layers of BNet are required for higher speeds, as noted by manufacturer's instructions. This slide is key to understanding BNet and how it really works. When I present safety seminars and talk about BNet installations, I refer to BNet as being a system. It takes a system to effectively reduce the kinetic energy of a fallen athlete. By understanding how it works, it will help you realize how this concept may affect your home racing and training slopes. Note the top section of the net must be at least 40 meters above an obstacle and 20 meters below the object. Never connect nets from different manufacturers in the same row or string, and the net should be at least 4 meters away from the obstacle. BNet accomplishes its job by absorbing the energy of a fallen athlete. It works best when hit in a glancing blow, as noted in this slide by the arrow path of the athlete. The system, when impacted, begins to absorb this speed by utilizing the BNet poles in the mesh fence above the impact zone. Below the impact zone, there's very little or no effect to the system. More basics on BNet. Installation, distances from trail edge, and obstacles and distance between the rows. You can see they're identified right here, and best practice being 4 to 5 meters away from the obstacle or the tree line, whatever you may have, and then 2 to 3 meters between the layers. And note this diagram at the bottom shows that you want to be a minimum 20 centimeters and a maximum of 50 centimeters in pole depth. We are all familiar with this scene, rolling it out, setting it up, maintaining it daily as it's deployed, and the task of taking it down and storing it when you're done. A chore that is ingrained in our sport, our athletes, coaches, and organizers. It's an important task that we have to take heartily. These next few slides are examples that need functional improvements that should be made to improve athlete safety. Training setup should be as it is on race day. If your slope has a homologation and protection plan, then it is best practice to set your training environment as you would for your races, utilizing your protection plan. This not only elevates the knowledge of the setup, but also improves athlete safety during training. We have come a long way with athlete safety and wish to share our knowledge and experience. This training environment is narrow, it's thin on snow, and though the course is not right on the edge of the trail, an athlete could likely find their way to the tree line in a crash. Training, as mentioned, should be prepared like race day and should be set with the same safety measures. This is a great setup. BNet systems on each side of the course, 3+ meters from the obstacles, and additionally extra high impact padding on the lift and snow gun towers. This is another good example of a double layer system for higher GS speeds with fall-away terrain to skiers left. The course is set well above and away from the fall-away terrain to avoid possible problems that naturally may be caused by this terrain. This slide and the next slide are examples of why I'm addressing you today. These slides show examples of some installations that are well intended, but they're not best practices and should be improved upon. I spoke earlier about BNet being a system. In these examples, the possibility of an athlete hitting these BNets is somewhat likely. BNet, when hit at a direct angle, 90 degrees or somewhat less, will do very little to slow the athlete. It's not an effective use. In this slide, any hit on these circular net setups would have little effect to slow the athletes. At this location, the resort and club has done what they believe to be best setup. BNets, tower pads are all in use. Does this appear to be a good setup? And I have no idea where this is, and if you recognize the location, it's not important. In this case, the BNet would only be slightly effective in slowing the athlete. The tower nets, if hit, are a pretty hard stop. They give very little and abruptly stop an athlete on impact. There's very little give in a tower net installation. If the fallen athlete misses the tower net by hitting this system from the side, there is little, if anything, that will avoid a hard hit on the towers if the athlete comes from the direction depicted by the red arrow. In this photo, like the last, it's lacking a system of BNet. A single net by itself is not a system and will not have the desired effect in slowing an athlete's fall, particularly if impacted as depicted by the red arrows. This is a more thoughtful use in creating a system that will work much more effectively than the two previous slides. There's a B-net system, padding above the tower net, a tower net in case the fallen athlete gets beyond the B-net and the padding. There's a willy bag on the tower along with the tower pad itself. This is a very thoughtful use. However, I would recommend one small change by tying the back layer of the B-net into the front system at the top where you can see the red circle. This would strengthen the second layer. Here is a good example of protecting on-hill snow guns utilizing a B-net system continuously above the obstacles and extended below. The next video show a B-net when impacted at 90-degree angle. Though it is set as a system above and below, hitting a B-net at such a direct angle is not as effective as being hit at a glancing blow. This athlete was thankfully not injured in the fall. It is somewhat difficult finding video of direct 90-degree hits on a system. I would ask you to share such video if you come across it so we can continue to evolve our educational efforts. Course setting plays a major factor. Avoiding possible impacts that result in very direct hits on safety installations should be avoided. In this instance, the athlete impacts the system at a fairly direct angle while remaining prone. Training athletes about systems, how they work, and what they may do in the case of a fall when they may hit a system is very important. In the case of a direct impact angle, an athlete may have better reduction of kinetic energy and speed by hitting the system having fallen to the surface rather than impacting it prone. This video shows another fairly direct hit on a system. As you can see, it could be improved upon to better slow the athlete since the athlete travels beyond the system. As mentioned in the previous slide, course setting is a major factor, and avoiding combinations that may result in 90-degree hit on a system is best practice. Of course, we don't know where every athlete may fall or in what direction, though we can share combined experiences to avoid setting courses too close to the safety systems and to avoid setting combinations that may unintentionally point an athlete at a direct angle towards the B-net. Here is another video. This one is a two-layer system with a very direct hit. When the athlete hits the B-net, you can see the action of the nets working above the impact area to absorb the athlete's fall. The net below hardly moves, thus trusting you will know and share that B-net systems need to be set 2 or more sections above an object. Particular attention needs to be paid to such items as the snow gun and following best practice to lessen the possibility that an athlete may hit such an object. The placement of willy bags may possibly soften an impact. The nets did their jobs quite well in this instance. This is another good example. Athlete loses her balance and takes more of a glancing blow on the B-net system, and again, the system does a great job in stopping the athlete. In the next few slides are some images of good setups. Here is a double layer B-net system that goes around a scaffolding, and it has an air fence in front for added measures. This is another good example of a B-net setup for higher speeds. The skier's right B-net extends many sections above the potential impact zone at the top of the tree island. You will see installations at higher level events that do not conform to the basic B-net guidelines. These systems are designed by those that work at the highest level of our sport and who have many years of experience and knowledge. It is not recommended that you mimic such installations at home. In this instance, the technical advisor, yes, that's an official with a high level of recognition of experience and knowledge in our sport, saw the scaffolding as being a potential fall zone at a fairly high speed. The scaffold is fronted with an air fence, then a 3-layer B-net system. And please note that all these systems and layers all tie into each other to build strength into the system. The organizing committee had plenty of additional B-net, so the technical advisor used his judgment to add an additional layer that could only assist in keeping an athlete on the field of play side of the fences. And in review, use best practice principles for all manufacturers for B-net installations. Build a system. It takes a minimum of 3 B-nets to make this system, and more is better. Thoughtful course setting to avoid direct impacts on safety systems. And training or racing, use the same plan as your homologation. I thank you in advance for sharing this presentation and any knowledge picked up by participating today. We have made great strides in improving safety for athletes by our vigilant attention to our racing and training environments. Please continue your efforts to share information and your knowledge with others. As a community, we have a responsibility to act in the best interests of our athlete and their safety. Thank you for your continued support. And a special thanks goes out to those that have shared content, including Slalom Tokyo Drift, World Cup Supply, and Reliable Racing Supply. Look forward to soon seeing you on the slopes this season. Thank you.